My name is John Hill with TechSage Solutions. We're a San Antonio-based technology solutions provider focusing on small to mid-sized businesses. And, really happy to have my friend Natasha Boyko with IDAGENT here with us this morning to talk to you about the dangers of the dark web and how to protect your corporate identity. So with that brief introduction, Natasha, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks everyone for taking the time. As John mentioned, my name is Natasha, and I am with IDAGENT, one of TechSage's cybersecurity partners. And my goal today is to talk to you just a little bit about the landscape of cybersecurity facing the small to medium-sized business market and how that has changed in the last couple of months, and how cyber criminals are taking advantage of these changes and of this new vulnerable population, and how they're kind of customizing their attacks and changing ways that they're trying to get in the front door of your business. And then talk to you about kind of how you can use that to educate your employees, and then have some great solutions in place that help you kind of keep that lock on the front door. Before I dive into all that, though, and give you just a little bit of background on myself and on IDAGENT. So I've known John for a while. It's been, I guess, a few years now, John. So it's been a while. IDAGENT, as I mentioned, is a cybersecurity solution provider. So we've got a platform that, from a core business model, monitors the dark web for credential exposure. So looking at those emails and passwords of your employees that have been stolen and are for sale, for auction, up on the dark web floating around. We monitor for that exposure. And we've also got security awareness training, phishing simulation, and a multi-factor authentication platform as well. So I'm going to dive into all that with you here a little bit this morning. But to kind of just kick things off, when we think about you hear these breaches in the news all the time, both from massive, large companies like Target, British Airways, Marriott, down to the smaller companies. So, people that are kind of in this space, in the small to medium-sized business market. And, you think, how are all of these breaches actually happening? How are these cyber criminals consistently getting their foot in the door and causing this serious kind of catastrophic damage, where we find that small to medium-sized businesses that suffer a cyber attack are, over 60% of the time likely to go out of business. So how does this happen? And what we find, through all of our research and through our platform and what our analysts are finding, is that cyber criminals are getting in because of compromised credentials. And this is, the result of employee behavior. It's the result of what the humans are doing on a daily basis that allows cyber criminals to potentially get their foot in the door. So it's things like, using the same password for all of your accounts. It's things like creating, accounts on all sorts of websites, both work-related, not work-related, using your work email address. All these different ways that cyber criminals are able to gather these credentials and then use it to create a phishing attack on your company using someone's credentials. Using brute force attack methods to get their foot in the door. So all of these different ways are kind of the result of a compromised credential. So part of our goal as a company, and partnering with great solution providers like TechSage, is being able to give you, the business owner and employees at an organization, the visibility into when these credentials are exposed, and giving you kind of the opportunity to mitigate that risk head on and have kind of real-time insight into what's going on. Because, at the end of the day, employees are going to do what they're going to do. It's really hard to completely lock that behavior down, but there are ways that you can have better visibility into what's going on. And, a huge piece of this for us is thinking about this concept of zero trust. So as a cybersecurity solution provider, and as a company that's kind of building these solution sets for our partners and for their customers, it's really thinking about this concept of zero trust. And zero trust essentially is how we recommend building your entire cybersecurity framework. So it's making sure that the right people have the right secure access to the right machines with the right privileges, and then ultimately monitoring for that exposure. So going into it with the kind of idea or the notion that everyone's been compromised, if we were to run a dark web scan on everyone in this room right now, myself included, you'd probably find something that's out there. It's very common for these credentials to be exposed. So again, it's not necessarily a matter of stopping that exposure, but figuring out how do you know when that exposure happens, and how do you put other mechanisms in place, like making sure that the right people are accessing the right machines and that they've got appropriate privileges, and that you don't have, the wrong employee with admin access that shouldn't have it, or, an offboarding procedure that doesn't actually allow you to shut down certain logins or accounts for employees that are no longer active. So, really thinking about all of those different things that you can put in place, and then ultimately, monitoring for that exposure. What we're finding beyond that is that compliance and privacy laws are hitting this market like crazy. So a lot of you are probably familiar with GDPR, which was launched a couple of years ago, kind of throughout Europe. And this is Europe kind of setting the bar for compliance standards when it comes to cybersecurity. In just their first year of this being implemented, almost 90,000 data breaches were recorded, which is a big spike from what they were seeing normally. And what we're seeing kind of starting at the beginning of this year is that the states are kind of taking notice of that and are rolling out different compliance and privacy laws. So we see the two big ones right now are California and New York. Kind of those are the most sweeping changes that are most similar to GDPR. But if you look at all of the states at this point in time, every state has some form of regulations or laws in place to help protect consumers' data and to help you as a business owner really have these standards in place that really allows you to put better cybersecurity solutions and procedures, have visibility into what's happening, not only because it's a nice to have and it's something that you think is important, for protection, but also it's required by law now. This is something that the government is taking notice of, that cyber criminals are taking advantage of the small to medium-sized business market. And it's quite sad because we see these businesses shutting down one after another because of these data breaches. If you think about a company like Target, if they get attacked, it's a PR nightmare, and it's obviously not a good situation, but they've got the infrastructure in place. They have a huge cybersecurity kind of internal team. They've got money set aside to be able to handle the fallout, where a lot of these small businesses just don't have those same mechanisms in place. So it hits a lot harder. So it's I would say quite reassuring that the government is taking notice of that and putting these laws into place to really help protect businesses, so that cyber criminals it makes it just harder for them to get their foot in the door. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit into how we're seeing these attacks changing. And there's a Q&A, and I forgot to mention this, but there's a Q&A box if you navigate to the bottom of your Zoom room. So if you've got any questions, please put questions into the Q&A box and I'll address those all at the end. I'm definitely going to save time here to get to your questions. But what we're going to do is kind of go through some screenshots of real attacks, different things that we're seeing right now in the market, in kind of the dark web, kind of cyber criminal space, and how that can impact your employees. So thinking about all of these different attacks and how you as a business owner can really help educate your employees to be able to pinpoint these attacks, to be able to recognize these different phishing scams and different mechanisms that cyber criminals are using to try and get their foot in the door. And I had mentioned, obviously the world has changed, right? This is, kind of beating a dead horse at this point, I think, but we're all dealing with, a newly engaged remote workforce. We're dealing with employees that maybe have never had to work from home before, have never had to kind of adjust their environment in that way. They're very used to coming into the office and working in that kind of construct, where now they've got to do it from home. And not only do they have to do it from home, they've got kids that, they need to also teach every day. They've got, an entire family that's now home in the house. They've got, a lot of different things going on. I think everyone's stress and anxiety is through the charts right now, or off the charts right now. And, really just figuring out, how do I stay informed? How do I stay educated? How do I stay up to speed on what's happening, what's the newest regulation, what's the newest thing that's happening, what's the newest kind of plan that's being implemented, or the newest numbers from the CDC. And unfortunately, you know, we all would like to hope that cyber criminals would take a break and say, all right, we're suffering enough. Let's not, you know, attack everyone right now. But unfortunately, they've been waiting for this moment. Cyber criminals have been sitting around and they're like, man, I really wish there was a global pandemic so that we can really start targeting these people. So unfortunately, this is happening. We're seeing phishing attacks surging. One number, I don't have a slide for it, but you know, when you log into a secure website, you know, it's HTTPS, or you see the SSL, the secure certificate. We saw just in the month of, I think it was February and March, the number of false security licenses or secure kind of hyperlinks for sale on the dark web that were COVID related went up into the thousands. So cyber criminals very quickly capitalized on that and were like, oh man, I'm going to start creating all of these fake websites to try and get people's information. So that's kind of where we're seeing the phishing attacks surging, particularly in business emails. So kind of attacking people's work email address. And I've got some examples here that I'll run through of just different ways these are happening, different types of examples that we're seeing. You know, this is one from the CDC, obviously very timely. If I get something from the CDC, I'm going to want to know what it says because it's helping me stay informed. And obviously, you know, a hyperlink to an updated list of new cases in your city, that's not a real hyperlink. This is, you know, an attempt for them to either install malware on your computer or get credentials that way. We see an uptick in workplace policy emails. So things that look like they're coming from HR or from, you know, the leadership team saying, you know, here's an updated policy, click on this document, contact us right away if you have any questions. So very realistic looking emails that are being, you know, sent out and targeting these individuals. And one, if you are distracted at home, if you are already in kind of a high stress, high anxiety mindset, or if you're scrolling through your mobile device because you're trying to make dinner and teach the kids their math homework and deal with all of that, and you're just scrolling through, you're much more likely to click on these emails. So this workplace policy one has been huge that we're seeing. Medical advice, this is one, I believe it was in Singapore. Yeah, so you know, different safety measures. Again, encourage your employees. Everything that you receive right now with a hyperlink, with a link to download something, an attachment, please take a much closer look than you would have normally. Just be aware that, you know, these attacks are increasing. And unfortunately, you can have the best software in place, but a lot of these are still getting through. So they're still hitting the individuals. So it really does come down to that education and awareness and creating this culture of cybersecurity where you've got a staff that's not afraid to raise their hand and say, don't know if this is real or not, just wanted to run it by you. Or kind of, you know, maybe in a worse scenario, hey, I clicked on this, don't think I was supposed to click on it, but I need to bring it to your attention. You want to create that culture where people are just more vigilant, and that's the easiest and best way to kind of capture or stop these attacks before they become something more serious, is that awareness factor. This is one from the UK that, you know, I thought was quite relevant, and we're seeing it here too. You know, a landing page of a government website, you know, enter in your postcode here so we can start getting your relief money. This one was particularly fake looking, I think, but you know, people are still falling for it. We're seeing it here in the States, both from an individual kind of stimulus check, you know, when those were all being released, you know, getting those emails saying, hey, enter in all your direct deposit information so we can get you your money. Well, that obviously is not real. And then we're seeing it as well in text messaging. So, you know, not just looking at emails, but in SMS texts coming from the government or coming from, you know, some sort of federal organization alerting you that, hey, let's deal with this money. We're also seeing it with the small business loans and all of that has been kind of headlining the news, where those systems have been hacked, and, you know, really people, again, taking advantage of a vulnerable population. And this is something that John can provide to you guys as just a reference. So, you know, again, the education component is really important. And if you are living and breathing cybersecurity every single day, a lot of this seems, pretty obvious. But if you are, again, someone that, is out of their element just in terms of environment and working from home, having this reminder of here are some of the things to look out for. Always hover over the link if there's a link in the email. Take a really close eye to the sender, this is the email address, especially when you're looking at a mobile device, because a lot of times that sender, it's not quite as obvious if you're looking on a desktop or on a laptop to see kind of where that email is coming from. Make sure you look at that. This one's interesting. It's, instead of Miller Supply, it's 2 N's there. But if you're scrolling through that really quickly, I mean, that looks real. So being able to share these different, just tips on, here's what to look out for, just really can, help your employees get into that culture of cybersecurity frame of mind. Something that was also, we actually found this last year, I think it's more relevant than ever. Everyone wants to be a cyber criminal these days, so they are making it really easy for them to get into the business. This is something that if you were interested in hacking Facebook or gathering a bunch of Facebook credentials, you can buy these phishing kits on the dark web, and it's a step-by-step guide, all of the HTML coding, everything there for you to be able to create this fake phishing kit to send out to your targets. But this is an example of one of those kits, and you have to look really closely to really see which one's real and which one's fake. Kind of at very quick glance, they look just about the same, but when you look at the actual address, you can see that there's a difference there, and there's a couple of really small differences. But this is something that you can purchase for $100 or something. It's really cheap, really easy to do, but obviously can cause some serious damage. A couple of changes that we're starting to see in ransomware as well, and again, I think this is just going to increase this year. This is something that we started seeing towards the end of last year. So ransomware, if you're not familiar, basically is when a cyber criminal is stealing your data and then is essentially holding it for ransom and forcing you to pay a certain amount of money, or else they're going to keep the data. The struggle with this is, one, there's the question of, do I just pay the money to get my data back? Do I not pay the money and all my data is lost? What we find is that even if you pay the money, the chances of you getting your data back are still really, really slim. So even if you're getting a little bit of it back, you're still not getting a complete data set back. That's why things like backup and making sure that you've got a business continuity plan in place are really, really important, so that if this does happen, if if your data goes down for a little bit, you can recover from that without even having to worry about the impact on paying a ransom or anything like that. And that's something that John can definitely help you with in the team, and making sure that you've got your data secure. What we're seeing though is that cyber criminals are kind of taking this to the next step and adding in a public extortion component. So basically they're, taking the data and saying, look, you've got to pay X amount of money. Oh, by the way, if you don't pay us this money, we're going to just publish the data on the dark web anyway and cause your reputation to go down the drain, or cause, some extortion essentially publicly. So, that's something too. And, we really don't have an answer for that yet. Cyber criminals essentially are going to do what they're going to do. And there's not really a way to stop it. The dark web is not a regulated place where there's, police officers and different things happening to kind of stop this. It's a criminal marketplace. So again, having that proper data or business continuity plan in place so that if and when something like this does happen, you can recover really quickly is going to be critical. Another thing that we're seeing, and this is a snapshot of ransomware as a service. So if I'm just a lowly cyber criminal and I just need some help here, I can go onto the dark web, get a membership through a ransomware as a service organization, pay $100, $200 a month, and I have this great platform that I can add in all of my targets. They've got ransomware campaigns already loaded for you that you can send this out to everyone. So again, just kind of reiterating the point that it is increasingly easier to have access to these different mechanisms of attack. And, it isn't just, kid in a hoodie in a basement anymore, you know, like John's got in his background there on his room, but you know, it's people that this is their legitimate business. And what I'm going to share now is showing you some of these screenshots. So showing you the things that our analysts have pulled from the dark web. And what's important to remember, and I'm going to show you these screenshots, but one, don't try and go find these. You know, there's obviously a lot that goes into, it's not as easy as I may make it seem to go, you know, into the dark web and to find this. You know, there are a lot of things that you have to have in place in order to access that. But if you think about, you know, kind of just what the dark web is in general, so you think about, you know, the public internet that you and I use is this iceberg, right? So it's everything at the top of the kind of ocean there. And the dark web is this underwater kind of marketplace, you know, kind of area where these nefarious activities are happening. And that's what IDAGENT and our company and partnering with John and TechSage, that's what we're going into it so you don't have to. We're monitoring, we're looking at things, finding trends, finding, you know, the behaviors of your employees and what the result is there, and disseminating that information to you. So this is a job posting that I find fascinating. It's a software designer, $762,000 starting salary, contingent upon positive performance reviews, of course. So, you know, again, very real, very legitimate job posting that we found that is very lucrative, obviously, to be a software designer on the dark web. You've got different groups. This is the Clone Card crew, and essentially they're providing you data sets of credit card information. So this was Verizon accounts. You've got Warner Brothers, different kind of data dumps there of credit card information. What's really interesting is all of these different groups and kind of hacker organizations, they have rankings and ratings on the dark web, just like, you know, Etsy or Amazon, where people are kind of rating their experience. You know, this one, they got a really great review. Thank you for giving us a chance to provide you the best credit cards. They're really going after that customer service aspect and providing this data. What's also really interesting, and kind of I'll share some other examples, is how curated these lists can get. Here's one that isn't financial or kind of necessarily credential related, but voter information. So, you know, again, not going down a political path here, but, you know, over the past, you know, couple of elections, we've obviously heard of voter fraud and different things happening from these bad actors. So, you know, you can purchase 1.8 million voters here from the Kansas voter database, not only to potentially tamper with an election, but also, I mean, this is, you know, real personal identifying information that would be quite useful for a cyber criminal to be able to get his hands on. This is a newsletter that I find particularly interesting. So scam and fraud is common in the darknet. So these cyber criminals are really looking after each other to make sure that they're not getting scammed by other cyber criminals who are even worse than they are. So you've just got, you know, different types of communication, different newsletters, different, you know, websites, things that are, you know, really kind of alerting them to, hey, this is bad information. So, you know, really just trying to help each other out there. I was mentioning earlier kind of the curated lists of credit card information. This one is small corporate American Express cards from Miami, Florida. So it's, you know, down to not only the city, but also the type of credit cards, the type of users there, and they're giving you a nice holiday discount. So, you know, again, just looking for those great reviews. We've got, this one is California business owners, high credit score, complete information. You've got supply and demand here. It's so popular that it's sold out or it's out of stock. Anytime you see the word FULLZ, F-U-L-L-Z, on a data set, that means there's enough information provided for that person to be able to create identity theft or identity fraud. So that means that you've got pretty significant data there that that the individual is sharing. This is one that is probably no surprise to anyone here. You know, we've seen, you know, Zoom, I think, went from, they saw an increase in millions of users just over the course of a month as everyone was trying to get remote and get online and have their meetings. Cyber criminals are obviously taking advantage of that. So we're seeing, and this number is actually low, you know, and this is just one data set that was 352 compromised Zoom accounts. We're seeing millions of them now out there being posted. Unfortunately, hackers are doing some pretty bad things with this information. So not only, a lot of them aren't even for sale, they're just out there for public knowledge so that these hackers can just get into these meetings. You know, obviously, if you've heard the stories of school systems that are using Zoom to operate their classrooms, you know, people coming in and getting into those sessions and taking photos of students. And it's just, you know, obviously just not a good scenario. And Zoom, to their credit, has done a really great job of addressing those security issues pretty quickly and efficiently, and making their platform more secure. But, you know, for you just to think about, you know, as you're moving into this remote world and as you're thinking about, you know, how do I continue to have productive conversations and meetings with my employees, with my customers, with people that I need to engage with, you know, you have to think about the security of these platforms. You know, anytime that you see a surge in a particular type of technology or, you know, collaboration platform, anything like that, that's just ripe for cyber criminals to get in there and start exploiting those platforms. So, you know, obviously always something to think about. You know, with Zoom, there's, you know, a lot of great articles out there that give you some tips on how to make the rooms more secure, make sure it's password protected, make sure that you've got a waiting room set up so that you're physically allowing people into the room, you know, not allowing certain people to screen share, you know, different things like that. But again, these are just new things that you probably didn't have to think about before. So being able to share with your employees, like, here's what cyber criminals are doing with this data. Here's how they're selling it. Here's what this kind of crazy world of the dark web looks like, really helps you just reiterate that point of cybersecurity being critical right now. And really, you know, it's so important to be vigilant and to make sure that everyone is aware of these things that are happening and that are really, they're not afraid to raise their hand and have a discussion about it. This is another just great, simple infographic that John can provide to you guys for your employees. But, you know, there's no fail-safe mechanism. There's no one-size-fits-all that's going to protect every single thing in your organization. But there are certain things that you can do to really reiterate this with your employees and say, look, here are just some basic tips that we can, you know, start looking at and putting into place that, again, just help create this culture of cybersecurity. And this education is going to be critical to making sure that they're aware of that. So kind of thinking about all of that content and all of the education and all of the scary things that are happening that's going on out there, how do you implement a solution that can help kind of cover your bases, give you an opportunity to protect your employees, that just makes sense and is streamlined? So part of what John is able to offer through our partnership, is our platform. And we've got a few different components that I'll just run through pretty quickly here. And then I definitely want to be able to address any questions that you guys have. But, you know, thinking about, you know, this idea of just making sure that your customers, your employees, all of the people that have access to your information are covered. So part of what, you know, our platform, and this is what we came to market with, this is our kind of core business model, is dark web monitoring. So again, continuous monitoring of compromised credentials. So it's emails, passwords, and PII. So this is personal identifying information. So it's other categories of information that may have been exposed along with that password. So things like billing address, mailing address, mother's maiden name, social security number, all of those other categories that, again, as you can see, can, you know, cause some serious damage there. One of the kind of differentiators with our platform that you have access to is actually the ability to see the full clear text password associated with these records. So we're not just giving you the email address that was compromised, we're also giving you that password, so you can not only immediately validate that data, but you can also, you know, really use that to make some informed decisions. I'll share a really quick story with you guys. I was talking to one of our partners earlier this year. It was actually the very last in-person event that I attended. And he had mentioned he's the owner of a technology solution provider company, and he was talking to a prospect, so someone that he was trying to bring on board to help with their IT. And they ran a dark web scan, so they ran a one-time scan of that woman's business and kind of all of her employees. And as she was looking through the results, one of them kind of popped up and triggered something, and she was like, "Wait, I'll be right back." And she actually stood up in the meeting and walked outside into the office. And what she had found was that there was an employee that had been compromised that showed up on the report. And that employee had actually left the company 2 years ago. That employee was terminated, but that password looked familiar. So she realized that when they were offboarding that employee after she had been terminated, what they did was just wrote down the passwords she was using for various accounts on a Post-it note. And that password was an active account for one of the bank accounts the company was using that woman was responsible for monitoring or whatever. And that day, 2 years later, she actually, the business owner, logged into the bank account using that password. It was active. The bank account had access to millions of dollars, both in cash, in credit lines, in all the financial records. And it was insane. And, it kind of, really scared her, because she was like, this employee hasn't even been here for 2 years and this is happening. So without this report and without this visibility into what was going on, she would have never known and would have continued using that password. So what it also did was allowed them to come up with better onboarding and offboarding procedures. So you think a lot about tech and cybersecurity kind of in a very IT kind of framework, or in just the technology and the platforms, and making sure that Active Directory is turned off and that they don't have access to kind of network systems. But those third-party websites that we all need to create accounts for as we're going through our day-to-day are such a huge risk. And that's the foothold that a lot of these cyber criminals are using. So things like a bank account, things like a CRM if you're managing your clients or your customers, travel websites, even just staples for ordering office supplies. We had a very similar story of a business that their Staples account, the password was still active, and that employee had also left several years ago and had access to their current ACH and routing number. So, thinking about all of these different ways that a cyber criminal can potentially get in the door, you don't know that until you're seeing the activity and seeing that traffic. So having that active monitoring, getting an alert anytime someone has been exposed, working with John and the team to make sure that you're addressing it appropriately with that employee, that you're creating better policies and procedures, can really, at the end of the day, potentially save your business. We've also got a platform that allows you to do phishing simulation and security training and awareness. So again, this is just reiterating that point of education is the way to go here with your customer, or with your employees rather. Making sure that you're doing regular phishing simulation, you're doing regular security training. Our phishing simulation has a really great data point that actually allows the individual, when they get that phishing simulation, to not only open the email and potentially click on the link, but it also gives them an opportunity to submit data. So what that means is if it's let's say it's, an Office 365 phishing email, it gives them an opportunity in that email to say, hey, we're doing some maintenance, need you to enter in your Office 365 credentials. We're not storing any of that information, so you don't need to worry about that side of it, but it gives you that data point to be able to say, look, of your employees, 33% of them clicked on the link in this email, and 22% of them potentially gave away the keys to the network in one phishing. So it really helps you, again, work with the team at TechSage to really build out those really great policies, procedures, awareness campaigns, so that you can feel comfortable knowing that your employees are being secure, that they are being regularly tested, so you know where there's risk and where there's opportunity for additional training. And then we've got another solution, and I'll just, again, I just wanted to show a real quick screenshot here. This is a new solution that John can work with you on. But again, things like two-factor authentication, password management, all of those additional security solutions that can, again, help keep that lock on the front door. So different, ways that you can just ensure, that slide that I had earlier about zero trust, that concept of making sure that the right people have the right access to the right machines. So really focusing on those credentials and enabling multi-factor authentication and having a password manager, having a single sign-on so you've got all of your applications in one place. Just different ways that you can be more secure. And again, it's not a one size fits all. It's not going to be, the end all be all. This is just for us, we like to think of it as a very people-centric cybersecurity solution. So putting dark web monitoring, phishing and training, digital risk management, and all of that into place just helps you kind of have better visibility, better insight, and better control over the employee behavior side of this. And then other solutions like backup and disaster recovery, different antivirus, different firewalls, all of that go hand in hand with this. So, it's really working with the team at TechSage to build a comprehensive security solution that not only protects your machines and protects the network, but also protects your employees, because we all know that sometimes they're the weakest link, right? You can have all the best things in place, but if I click on one email or if I accidentally download an attachment because I think that it's really important, that could be it. So, really just working together to build a really comprehensive security solution that gives you that 360 view of what's going on, and just allows you to have peace of mind. And particularly in today's world where we're working remotely, we've got, different risks. There's different things that are happening now, potentially to our businesses. You don't need this stress. There's enough things happening. You're focusing on moving forward and day to day getting through this and making sure that you're still, servicing, your clients and your customers and protecting your employees from a public health standpoint, and, making sure that everyone is able to feel secure in their jobs and all of that. So the last thing you need to worry about is that cybersecurity piece of it. So, working with a great provider like John and his team, and I that maybe that'll be my last plug for you, John. I don't know, but it's been, we love working with TechSage, and we've been working with them they were one of our very first IDAGENT partners, back in the day. So, really just partnering with a great provider like this that allows you to have that peace of mind, so you don't have to do it, because you don't have to, allow this team to really put those mechanisms in place for you. So I wanted to keep it at just about 40 minutes, and I think I'm doing good there. So I saw we have a couple of questions here that I'll get to. And if you've got any other questions, please type them in. We've still got some time here, so I'm happy to address those. A question here from Iris, and I'll read this. Within our group, many of us have received emails that look like they're coming from members of our team. They obviously look like a scam. If we simply receive them and delete them, does it mean that our email was hacked and that the sender was hacked, or that we could all potentially be hacked? Again, assuming we don't do anything but delete the email. And that's a really good question. And, that is something that we're seeing, again, more and more of. We saw it happening a lot last year with, the gift card emails. I'm sure a lot of you have seen those, where it looks like it's coming from an executive at the company saying, hey, I need, 10 Amazon gift cards. Can you go buy them real quick? Or I need, X number of things I need you to go purchase. Now, obviously, we're seeing COVID-related emails like this popping up. It's kind of hard to determine kind of from a blanket statement of what that potentially means internally. What it most likely means, kind of at the very least, is that sender, that email that has been potentially compromised, or that a cyber criminal may be testing against a bunch of emails as well. This is something that we see. It's very easy for a cyber criminal to gather naming conventions for a company. So you can look on the website or on LinkedIn and say that, oh, everyone at this company is first initial, last name at company name. So you can start testing. So that's something that our platform will pick up. So it'll pick up, when there's false email addresses that didn't exist before that are now popping up with activity. But in this instance, obviously deleting it is the right thing to do, and working with John and his team to kind of explore further to see where there could be some additional risk, and whether it means that you all may have been hacked or whether it's just one individual. That would, take some additional research there, but there's definitely ways that, we can help you, kind of stay on top of that. But again, in those instances, always really important when that's happening to let John and the team know so that, you know, he can investigate and look into what's happening there. But it could mean a number of different things. But at the very least, that individual that it's coming from, their email was probably compromised in some way through some type of third-party breach.
And we're actually very happy to have you contact us about it. That's what we want you to do, because, you know, we can do some checks and tests and see. You know, a lot of times, like Natasha said, it's maybe some far end, or maybe it's just a test, but we always like to help and see if we can figure out what it is, to where if there is something we can do to block, we can do it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that goes into the second question here. How can I block repeat junk mail? So again, that's something that John and his team would work on. That falls kind of outside of the IDAGENT solution set and kind of the platform there, but there's definitely some things that John and the team can do to help you with that.
Right.
I've gotten text messages telling me my order is ready with a strange link. Obvious it's a scam, but is this a whole other can of worms? So again, Susan, this is another example of ways that cyber criminals are customizing these attacks, that are getting creative. I've gotten them to where it looks like I've got a package that has been delivered, or I've got something ready for pickup. You know, this is, again, something that you just want to delete right away and just keep an eye on. But again, it could, you know, it's just another one of those customized phishing attacks that we're just seeing spike, particularly now.
Yeah, I've actually seen several of those myself, and not a lot you can do to prevent those that are coming as text, but just to be aware of the fact that there's a reasonably good chance it is a problem, and just to, you know, go ahead and delete it.
Yep. They're getting very creative, and there is no limit to what a cyber criminal will do to try and get your information. So I think it's always better to operate on the paranoid end of the spectrum, and just verify every single thing, you know, and even if it does look like it's coming from your CEO or from, you know, someone that you work really closely with, you know, always verify. You know, we've gotten them internally ourselves where it looks like, you know, my CEO has sent me an email saying, hey, Natasha, I need your help with this. Can you go buy me, you know, 5, you know, Visa gift cards that we can send out to our partners? And I'll call them and be like, Kevin, you've never asked me to do this before. Like, what's going on? You know, and again, it's increasingly obvious that these things are fake. How many passwords will a Passly vault hold? Can you explain again how that vault works? So I think that's probably an offline discussion. Passly is our newest solution. So both John and I are still kind of learning all of the ins and outs of that. But John, I don't know if you've got an answer to that.
Not on that piece. We're always happy to set up a demo right now with some of Natasha's team members that are experts in the Passly platform. But yeah, just get with me on that, and be happy to set up a demo with them and go through the whole deal on it. It's a great platform. It's a great product, and we're really just starting to work with it. So we'll learn on it together on exactly what some of those parameters are.
Yeah, it's brand new. We just released it officially a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. So, you know, within that platform, so you've got multi-factor authentication, password manager, and single sign-ons. There's a lot of different features that you can roll out to your employees that make it easy to live just in one platform for that. But, you know, again, as John mentioned, you know, definitely get a demo scheduled, because we're still rolling all that out, as it is, you know, a relatively new solution for us, but it's awesome, really comprehensive and easy to use. Cool. Any last questions here? Type now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything else coming up. So
awesome.
Well, fantastic, Natasha. Thank you very much for the presentation. You know, hopefully, I think everybody probably learned a few things they didn't know. You know, again, we're certainly here to help. You know, we work very closely with Natasha's team, and glad to get with any of you. So just let us know what we can do to help. Those of you that are partners, we've already talked to a few of you that we're looking at this platform and that we're going to move forward with it. But certainly happy to talk to any of the rest of you. So on that, we'll give you the rest of your day back. And thanks again, Natasha. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've taken nothing away, take one thing: go change your Zoom password. That is the one thing you can be immediately more secure. Thank you again for having me, John. Love doing this. And have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.